I remember when I moved to Saskatoon 7 years ago, with my security mindset, I was looking for a community like this to connect with, but I couldn't find one. I had to go all the way to Manitoba, which is the closest. That's what I believe. But I'm happy today we are establishing the ground, and I'm very, very happy that we are moving, to the greater heights. All right, we want to talk about, risk management, as it relies on third-party supply chain and all that. We have all been hearing a lot of things happening these days. A lot of organizations, businesses are disrupted, whether through malfunctioning IT system, just like we had for CrowdStrike, or through attackers, leveraging vulnerability in people, in process, or in technology, and using that to impact our organization. So I like the fact that the first Adam talked about impact, which is a form of, it is a key word when we talk about risk management. I love the way he defined it, but I'm going to define it differently, but very, very similar, right? I consider risk as the probability that a threat actor is going to exploit vulnerability in our systems and the impact on our organization. So we're going to be talking about third-party risk management and what businesses should do. Yeah, who am I? I need to set my timer here. Well, if you're going to take anything away here, I embrace diversity, I love equity, and I also encourage inclusion. So please help us to push this mantra forward. I'm one of the cybersecurity leaders. I pride myself to say that because I've invested a lot of time in this profession, and I will be sharing my expertise and experience. So I also encourage people who are joining cybersecurity, who wants to develop their career in cybersecurity. At least, I would say, in a week, I spend 6 hours with people, mentoring them. Every week, 6 hours, mentoring them on how we can have a better cybersecurity profession. So let's talk about third party. Who are your third parties today? There is literally no organization, that might be wrong. There is literally no organization that can exist on their own, right? It's either they use one software, they use a computer, but your third party are consultants. If you use consultants in your organization, if you use any vendor, if you outsource anything to any partner, if you use contractor, if you work with any agencies, if you use a managed service provider or managed security service providers, those are your third parties. If you have anything that you don't use, you have to buy, or people have to provide for you, you've got suppliers, those are your third party. I'm going to be using supply chain, third party, vendor interchangeably throughout this conversation. Please bear with me. All these third party are entry points for our organization. The reason is that attackers don't just attack us. They find, if you look at the attack chain, you will see that the first point is the entry point, initial access. Then it goes all the way to compromising your system. So every third party you add to your organization, you are introducing another entry point for the bad guys to get access into your environment and probably infiltrate them. So, did you remember this? For the guys that couldn't see, if you are sitting on the back, this in 2021, Microsoft was breached, and they are breached by these guys. If any organization using Microsoft Exchange, they suffer an attack sometime 2021. If their system is relying on Exchange, if your email communication is relying on Exchange, Another one, there has been so many news out there. When I started to count, I lost count. I just said I'm just going to pick a few ones and discuss in this conversation today. Toyota had to suspend 14 of their manufacturing plants back then in 2022 because they suffered third-party breach. Not only that, we all know SolarWinds attack. About 18,000 customers they were impacted, including government agencies. So these are things that the attackers are leveraging on. If the attacker sees that you have built a very strong wall around your organization, but you have not done well in third-party risk management, they will look for that weakness in the supply chain and take advantage of it. SolarWinds, it is a monitoring tool. Of course, we want to monitor our critical assets because they are very, very critical to our business operations. For us to manage our risk properly in the organization, we look at our critical business processes, we look at our critical systems, and we look at our critical data. For attacker to look at how do I get into this organization, one of the entry points is, maybe the attacker said, let's breach SolarWinds. We are not just going to have access to one organization, we'll have access to so many organizations. And these organizations are monitoring their sensitive systems that have access to maybe sensitive data through this system. If you're able to breach it, we have access to the kingdom. And guess what happened? 18,000 customers were impacted during this breach. Remember Okta Bridge as well? It was also in the news, where all data in their customer service support were stolen by attacker. There are so many news, and I got tired, and I'm like, okay, what case study can we discuss today? And what access would the attacker have that will be of interest to us today? I looked at, Uber was also breached back in 2022. Uber breached again? How are we going to do it? What did they have access to? Let's look at what happened in Uber breach. First of all, there is a gang called Lapsus. Lapsus gangs, they compromise Uber's contractors' accounts. So for many of us that use contractor, Uber does the same thing because it could not exist on their own. So they have their contractors, and the attacker compromise the third party's credential. And what happened after that? It was not so easy to compromise the third party credential because they have put some level of control in place. There is MFA that is in place. Even though you steal username and password, then you have to find a way to break the MFA. Unfortunately for the contractor, they suffered what we call MFA fatigue. How many of you here use or have used MFA before that you have to click on approve? Right. So what did the attacker do? They were constantly bombarding the contractor. Haven't gotten the username and password, they needed to still get a way to bypass the MFA. They bombarded and contractor mistakenly just click approve, boom. And the threat actor gained access into Uber's system. And the system they gain access to is another very sensitive system that is controlling all their privileged credentials, which is their PAM solution, Privileged Identity Management System. So you rely on another third party to keep your credentials somewhere, and you have several controls. That's why zero trust, I agree with zero trust, 24/7. It's not just looking at a condition being met. It's looking at the context. Where is this computer coming from? Has this computer come from this location in the past? I don't trust it. I need to re-authenticate this guy. Assuming they have implemented maybe zero trust, maybe the system could have, challenged the access. The attacker will have to use MFA fatigue to gain access the second time, the third time, as they move around, within the premises of Uber. I said game over because if you have gained access to privileged systems, guess what the bad guy had access to? He had access to Uber's Google Workspace. This is a screenshot that was shared, online by the threat actor. He also had access to their AWS instance. Just imagine this is where all your workloads are kept. In your workload, there are so many applications, so many data that are in one system or the other. They gain access to that. They share this screenshot. Not only that, the endpoint security solution that could have prevented the bad guy, from moving further, they also had access and shared this screenshot online. They didn't stop there. They had access to the VMware environment of Uber. It's just like having access to the core infrastructure. What else? Why? Because the key components, the key systems in the process has been compromised, which is the PAM solution. Similar to the PAM solution that was compromised, maybe many of us use LastPass. I also use LastPass, and by the time it was compromised, they sent me an email. Fortunately for me, I use LastPass for some sensitive information that I want to give access to some of the people that I mentor, to say, okay, you want to have access to my lab environment? Okay, you can connect through VPN. If you want to have access to the VMware, to my EXSIOs and all that, okay, you can use LastPass to connect. So worst case scenario, they were going to have access to my lab environment. So Uber did not just have a system exposed to threat actor. They have their Slack, they have their communication channel taken over by this threat actor. You can see their Slack was taken over, and those guys have access, and they were communicating to the entire Uber's workforce. What about financial data that they have access to? There are a whole lot. So what we are trying to say here is that trusted relationship with third party introduces our organization to risk. And if you look at the statistics on the screen here, starting from 2021, I don't know why it dropped in 2021. I was thinking, oh, maybe it was because of COVID. Maybe COVID hits the bad guys too. Maybe many of them fell sick and they couldn't do what they were supposed to be doing. So it went down in 2021, and in 2022, and you know why this is? You can guess why this is so much last year. MOVEit. How many of us heard about the MOVEit compromise? When MOVEit software, many organizations, including many of the big fours, use MOVEit to share sensitive information. They don't just want to share sensitive information through emails. Maybe they could have used a better way of sharing it, but they use MOVEit. Attackers also leverage MOVEit to have access to sensitive information. In 2023 alone, we've got over 2,700 attacks that is as a result of supply chain. And some of these statistics can be very, very concerning. This that you have on that side is just a study conducted by CrowdStrike. Last year is in their report in 2024, studying just 2 Asian threat actors, the China Nexus and the North Korea Advisory, and they discovered that 250 of the customer they study, they have servers that are compromised. 62 customers use Trojanized software, and 10% of the customer had their server having malicious software updated. All right, so how are these guys getting access? It's through third party as an attack vector, supply chain as an attack vector, and we are saying that it is one of the most common attack vector out there, apart from phishing. Why is it common now? Because attacker feels that if they phish you, they might only gain access to your system. So why would they spend so much effort gaining access to just one organization system? Why can't they concentrate their efforts in gaining access to a vendor that other people depend on? So if they gain access to that person's system, they can have access to every other system alongside. So is this a problem? Yes. How do we deal with it? We say it is an unavoidable risk because we rely on partnership to do our business. Organizations cannot function on their own. They need third parties, and their third parties also need another third party, which is now fourth party to us. Third parties introduce significant risk to many organizations, and it is one of the means which organization can be breached. So we said if you use supplier, if you use vendor, if you use consultant, you are also at risk. So let's look at, let's just create a mental picture on how the more we have suppliers in our environment, the more third party that work with us, that we depend on to achieve our business goal, how they affect our attack surface. Organizations exist, whether you are a software development company or you are a platform owner or whichever organization you are, there is an inherent risk. My colleague Adam talked about risk management a lot here, and he talks about risk elimination. That is something I'm usually very careful the words to use, because I believe that there will always be residual risk. Even as we are sitting down here, there are risks for us sitting down here, right? I try to work so hard to reduce the risk for my organization, based on impact as much as possible. And for organizations to exist, they have their own risks they have to deal with. Now, if you introduce third party, your attack surface begins to increase. You had another third party, your attack surface begins to increase. You had another one, another contractor, your attack, the more you had, the more your attack surface continued to increase. And guess what? It did not stop there. You have subcontractors that are working for your own contractor. And as soon as you introduce that, you need not to deal with just third-party risk alone. You are going to be dealing with fourth-party risk, right? So this makes it so difficult and complex for us. And if we need to deal with it, we must have a solid third-party risk management program in place. How do we deal with this? Third-party risk management. The first thing we want to talk about is inventory. In cybersecurity, we talk about inventory a lot. You can hear Adam talk about inventory, right? Inventory of your assets, inventory of your data, inventory of your third-party providers, right? So if you do not know your third-party providers and also know the fourth-party provider, but not everything, because we need to take a risk-based approach. I'm a risk person. If you are in cybersecurity and you don't use, if you don't use the risk-based approach methodology, you might be standing in the way of the business. So I want to encourage as many of us, especially some of us that are very technical. Oh, we've got this vulnerability. We have to fix it now. The question is, have you looked at the vulnerability and apply risk approach to it? What's the priority? Why are you fixing it now? What is the probability that a threat actor is going to exploit that vulnerability? And if exploited, what is going to be the impact? Is it impacting our critical system? So let's ensure that we have inventory and we classify our third-party providers. The people that are providing services for us, we classify them based on how critical they are in our delivery process. In delivering our business objectives, we have a list of all of them and say, okay, these guys have access to my sensitive information. These guys have access to my critical systems. They have access to my critical data. You classify them, so these are high-risk third party or high-risk vendor. Then you use that approach to classify them to maybe critical, high, medium, low. You have that inventory and you maintain it. For those that are critical to you, you also charge them to provide, you educate them on third-party risk management. You charge them to provide the suppliers or the third parties that are also critical to them, which is now your own fourth party that you have to manage. So not only just compiling the list and classifying them. For software companies, or organizations that have developers, another thing you need to put in mind is your developers leverage a whole lot of third-party components in their software development process. Because of the push, the drive, DevOps, we want to do things very quickly. They leverage functions in libraries, in external components. They leverage functions even in plugins. They use plugin embedded in their stuff. So all of these things needs to be inventoried properly. Ensure that the secure software development lifecycle, all the external codes, all the external components are being inventoried. There are tools you can use like SCA, Software Composition Analysis tool, that gives you inventory, and not only just inventorying them, you need to understand the ones that they are calling function for. They might be using some, and they may be calling a particular function in that library or in that third-party component, and the function is not exposed to vulnerability. So you need to have the list of those third-party codes that your developers are using. And not only that, we also need to do an assessment for our third party. At least assessment, There are many ways of doing the assessment. We can have, questionnaire provided. You can use automated tool. We want to, before we onboard them, we want to do our due diligence and do third-party assessment for them, understand their security practices. Do they develop, if their software, if you are using their software, you should pay attention to their secure software development lifecycle and be sure that they are following the best practice. They ensure that security is not just bolted on, it's built in from the scratch, where they are doing the requirements gathering, then the design, where you have to do threat modeling, you have to look at the wireframe, you have to look at the data flow diagram, You have to do necessary assessment, ensure that they are doing that. Not only that, in the development phase, they are using tools like SAST tools, static application security testing tool. You ensure that they are using dynamic application security testing tool to test. They are using software composition analysis. They are monitoring all the software that they use. I was looking at my phone and I saw, I use, what's the name of this application again? I use, one of the applications, Airbnb application. And I got to a point and I saw that if you have Airbnb application on your phone, there is a part there that they list all the external software that they use now. Maybe as a result of the S-bomb bill that was passed in the United States and in EU, but there is nothing. I looked for that in Canada. The only thing I saw was recommendation. There was no law, but in the US and the EU, you're actually compelled. You have to be compliant with that law. But here in Canada, I saw just recommendation. Maybe I didn't find well. So it is very important for us to follow through and make sure that all our vendors, they are following through the secure software development lifecycle and they are doing what they are supposed to do. Not only just doing inventory and also assessing them and making your decision, you also need to monitor them. Monitoring is one I consider very important because most organizations, we do third-party risk assessments today and we just forget about them. No, we are supposed to do, from the onboarding, we onboard them, we assess them, and based on their criticality to our business environment, we need to continually assess them. I have done maybe a third-party security program for organizations, but when I see some organizations that are classified as critical and the level of access they've got to sensitive business information and sensitive business system, I categorize them as critical, and we do an assessment for them on a yearly basis, and we monitor them round the year using a particular tool to monitor how they are doing, on the external attack surface. So we need to monitor them and also plan for response action when they are breached. It is a matter of when they are going to be breached, when the incident is going to happen. It is not if it's going to happen. You must always prepare for the when it's going to happen so that you have a better chance, of stopping the incident at incident level. If you don't stop the attack at incident level, it's going to gravitate to a breach, and if you are not fast enough to stop it at a breach, it can lead to data breach. Incident is manageable, but when it comes to a breach and data breach, it is very, very stressful. All right, so monitoring your third party is crucial. You can monitor whether you use manual way of monitoring, but if you are a big organization, it might be very, very difficult for you to monitor your third party manually. You have to use tools that will help you, or you use another third party to monitor it, to monitor your third party. You can use third party to monitor your third party, or you can use third party tool to monitor your third party. You just need to be monitoring the monitoree. So we are in a serious situation, right? Very, very serious situation. Third party attack surface is very important. There are companies like maybe BSides, that does third-party monitoring. There are so many companies. I am fortunate to also be monitoring third-party attack surface for some organizations. Not only that, we also check the dark web. We monitor the dark web for conversation, for anything that pertains to those critical third party and their own, and the third party's critical third party. That's their fourth party. We monitor them on the dark web, and we ensure that we use automated tool to compare what is happening. We understand their digital risk score, and we are able to project something, to clients like this to see, oh, you've got your third party, you understand their criticality. If you look at the heat map here, you will see that on the red portion, these clients does not have any high critical third party that has high risk. So we plot the criticality of the third party against their digital risk score. If any of their digital risk score is at risk, is at a higher score, we will put them at that red portion of the heat map. So it is very, very important for organizations to use a monitoring tool or a monitoring service to continuously monitor the digital attack surface of their third party or of their fourth party, and of their fourth party. Whether you want to monitor either one or you want to monitor both, it is very, very important. So, one takeaway, the first takeaway I want us to go with here is to ensure that we have good security awareness and training for our employees that manage third party. And yeah, I missed something when I was talking about inventory. When you inventory your third party, you should assign owner for that third party in your organization. There should not be any third party in your organization that is critical, should not be missing owner. So the owner of those third parties should be properly trained to ensure that the contractors, the third party, they understand the risk that is associated to third party and also to contractor. I talked about, training your developers on secure software development lifecycle so that they understand the risk associated to using third-party components. Of course, they will need to use the third-party components because it makes their job easy. They don't have to reinvent the wheel. They don't have to recode the old process, the old system again. It makes their job very easy, but educates them on secure software development lifecycle, expose them, empower them with the tool to monitor vulnerabilities on those on those third-party components. Another thing is we need to do our due diligence when we are onboarding. We need to support the assessment. For some of us, we are in security, the security folks. Many of us are, we are open to that, but maybe we are not doing enough job in educating our workforce. I have seen projects happen, and the project sponsor, who is an executive, was like, we need to get this done. I say, yes, this is what our process says. Our process says we need to perform the third-party risk. So what we now did eventually is to educate our project management office on the importance of third-party because they start the project. So when they are doing their project planning, you need to carve out time for third-party risk assessment, privacy impact assessment. Doing all of these will help the organization. And for every time you spend on third-party risk management, you would have to, it is a time that is well invested. Also, trying your best to ensure that your third party are complying to regulations. They are complying to regulations in the US, just like I said about the application that I saw, that they are complying to US government SBOM regulation. Like I said, in Canada, it is, what we have here, it is recommendation. Maybe our Canadian government needs to do more. Just like Adam said, that we might need to shame some of them so that they can sit well. But I won't be in the forefront, Adam. All right, I talked about incident response. It's also very key takeaway for us. It's a matter of when we are going to be breached through our third party. And when we are breached, how do we respond? There are playbooks for third party attack. If you have a good incident response plan in your organization, I will expect that you have playbooks for maybe phishing attack, for denial of service attack, for incident response, for credential compromise, for ransomware, for malware outbreak, and all that. Don't leave out supply chain attack. Create one playbook for it. It's a matter of when it's going to happen. Look at your value chain and consider systems that are very sensitive. Consider data that are very sensitive to your organization. Look at your processes and ensure that you have a response plan. Think about it. Just like Adam said, a walk through a tabletop exercise. If this goes wrong, what is going to happen? How are we going to respond? What is it going to be the impact on our organization? What is it going to be the impact on our bottom line? And lastly, I'm in Canada, I'm a Canadian. Canadian digital supply chain is a collective responsibility of all of us. As we go back to our various organizations, as we meet with our different clients, we should put all of this in mind and be responsible for ensuring that all our third parties manage appropriately, educate our workforce, our third party, our vendor, our supplier, and position our organizations and Canadian economy in a very good spot so that we can withstand the attack of the future. Thank you so much for your time today.